This is the Pitt State Basketball Coaches Show with women's head coach Amanda David and men's head coach Jeff Boschee. Here's your host, Eddie Lomshek.
Good Monday, Pitt State basketball fans. Welcome to our latest installment of our weekly basketball shows. Eddie Lomshek with Pitt State women's coach Amanda David here off the top. This Monday, the 23rd, final week of the regular season for the Pitt State teams and the MIAA. Final shows of the season. It goes by in a blur, and the month of February, of course, shorter when it comes to days in the month. On top of that, Pitt State had games postponed late in January with Missouri Southern. So, Coach, February's been very busy. It always is. But, man, what goes through your mind when you think about, I say already, it happens every year. You go through the grind, the dog days, and then you look up, and here we are, final week of the regular season.
Yeah, I feel like every year I get older, it goes faster. That's what they say. So, I can't believe, celebrating senior day with Harper and Ashland, and just that it's into February. We're going to the conference tournament in, 2 weeks or whatever. At the end of this week, we'll be getting ready for that. And so, it's went fast, and I think we've had a great group to go through this season with, and I think also probably learning new team and just everything evolving and as a team and things keeps it moving pretty fast too.
Yeah, you mentioned the newness, and there are a lot of things to talk about with that, because here you are 26 games in or 27 games in, whatever, and there are still bumps in the road to navigate through, whether it's fourth quarter turnovers or whatever. Nobody's trying to miss a shot. Nobody's trying to miss a turnover, or commit a turnover. But with this group, where do you start in the progress you have seen, given how green you were at the start of the season?
Yeah, well, I think the Hayes game shows directly the difference of December 13th compared to February 20th,
21st, whatever it was.
And
yeah.
So nearly, I don't know what that is, just
two plus months.
Yeah, 2 months, and just the growth of, I think, confidence and chemistry and learning the offense, the defense, and having some coaching adjustments with going some zone and all those things. And it shows a little bit of the versatility of this group. I would have liked to have seen February without, the concussions, the flu for a week, and then, JB's peanut allergy, and just some of those things that went for about a 2 to 3 stretch week. Even that flu, it lingered. And so, I would have liked to have seen that be a little different in that stretch, but I also think we've had some individual lessons just in, just bench stuff and just being unselfish and just different things that I think we've learned in the past. Like, we've had some of that in the past too, a couple years ago. And we learned some tremendous lessons in some of that. And then it really paid off the next year. And so I think, it's all going to come full circle. It's just, when is that full circle moment? You hope it's maybe at our conference tournament. We learn some of those lessons and make a three-peat.
It's a situation. Number one, you have to be unbelievably lucky. And in the basketball season, if you want to call it the cold and flu season, right? You're in the locker room, you're in buses, hotel rooms. One person gets it, it's going to spread.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to be lucky to get through it. But you talk about this group as a whole. You've still, for the most part, you've been able to have some of the same starters. Some games, maybe not all of them full strength, but when you talk about progress as a group, how important is that you've not had some of these teams that have started 10 or 11 different players?
Yeah, that's just one thing that we kind of try to stick to.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't done something, like you've got hurt or you are sick, it's a little out of your control to lose your starting spot. And I think it just adds comfort and provides consistency for kids to know their roles too. That's not constantly changing with pressure and, oh, now I'm starting. And because there really should not be a ton of difference between starting or not. When you get in, you should be ready to go. So, I think that it's been good that we've majority had our whole team. It just, like I said, it was that one stretch. We're on a bus 5 hours back from Hayes, and the next week it hits. So, from where was that? I guess it was Hayes.
Emporia and Wichita,
yeah. Wichita, yeah. So, that bus ride back apparently was pretty infectious. So,
Get it spread around a little bit. This team, obviously, 3 straight losses, not where you want to be at this time of the year, at any time in the year. So, with that, you had lost back-to-back games, and then you see a really inspired effort for about 30 whatever minutes against Hayes. So talk about this team and maybe some mental toughness you have seen and hope to continue to see here this week.
Yeah, that mental toughness is probably the one I didn't throw in my list of things because it takes a lot of mental toughness to change roles, and maybe I got to play a lot this game. I didn't this game. The the things that we'd been through, and so I think that for the most part, the mental toughness is the key, and whether it's ref calls or your coach getting on to you, or the other team making a run and you don't lose yourself in it. Those are just lessons that we're having to learn with this group that some people have been through and some people have not, and some people have been in championship programs and some people have not. And so to understand how consistent you have to be in your mental toughness is something that I think we're learning individually right now. Who we can trust and those kind of things, it becomes a huge factor. And it's just every little play involves that resiliency and persistence. And if you did have something bad happen, how to go down to the other end and just change it. Like just even that possession. That's all you have to do. And don't let plays linger. Don't let them turn into runs for other teams. And so that's some of the things I think we're learning. I hope that we're learning. We'll see. Yeah.
With that, when you talk about maybe I didn't play as much this game or whatever, I know as coaches you're up front with that because some games, matchups dictate some of that, right? And then other games, some player might be having a little bit of a rough game. So how about navigating that with a player, that understanding just because you didn't play as much one game, you can't take it personally? Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. There, like you listed 3 or 4 of them, and then there's just sometimes that the team's on a roll and you just decide to stick with it. And it might have been you that we were in and it might not the next time. And so I think that those are just decisions that honestly they're hard to make. And 2 things can be right and 2 things can be wrong. And you just never know. And so you just got to stay ready. I think it was Coach Carl Stumo that put out a little tweet about Jemiah and Clara having earned their time, and then it's turned out to be pretty good for them. I mean, Jemiah sat for 2 years, and I literally mean sat for 2 years. I mean, she practiced every day against some really strong competition every day, kids that never just floated through practice. And so Jemiah has earned the right a little bit to have a little bit of a longer leash. And she has provided for us multiple games. She has provided an offensive scoring lift, and she's guarding out of position. We have a couple people doing that. But she's done it well. I mean, and she's just, I've had other players that have transferred because I have to guard the 4. Well, I'm not doing that. So that shows the team commitment that Jemiah has is like, oh, I'm going to guard the 4 this year? Okay, I'll do my best. And then she just goes. And so there's a lot to be said for that too. If this is what the team needs, I'm going to do it. And Jemiah is a great example of that. Clara, same thing. She sat behind some kids last year as a freshman, and we have other people that don't have to do that right now. They might have to do it one game and not the other. And so you got to have a big picture perspective on being in a top 25 program, that you might have a game or 2 here and there that you don't get what you want because what's good for the team. And there's so many factors. Well, and when it was really being built and you were an assistant under Coach Lord, I think about Hayden Herlocker and Paige Lungwitz. By the time they were seniors, they were the only 2 seniors that year. Their first 2 years, there were stretches of games they didn't even play. And they stuck with it, and they ended up being fantastic program players. So the old saying, trust the process, and I know this day and age, that gets lost a little bit. Kids are quick to transfer and some of that, but it really can be rewarding when you get your turn. And you mentioned Clara Swearingen. We'll talk about her as we go through the 2 games last week. But I see out there, it's easy to see on paper, shooting stats, what her percentage are, average, whatever. But talk about the little things when you see her, how hard she works to get over screens and just some of that toughness type stuff.
Well, everybody says they love to watch defense, but very few people actually pay attention to the fact of maybe somebody isn't scoring as much as they normally do, but they're being asked to guard the other team's best player all the time. And so that is something that Clara has drawn because of her athleticism, and she can get through ball screens. And she's used to chasing people around and trailing and doing all those things. And that's where at this point in the season, you kind of stick in your positions of who you've normally guarded, because you get in your routines of how you guard. And so I think that's important. And Clara has done a phenomenal job of guarding other teams' best players. And sometimes that's holding them to 20. Because number 23, Mears or Weers.
Yeah, Weers, the freshman for Kearney.
I should know her name. It's disrespectful, honestly, because she's a player. And Clara had to guard her. And then, I thought she did, and I think Hannah Miller guarded her second half a little bit, so we got her slowed down. But yeah, she's a player. I mean, she can shake you, lift up, and score, and you just can't guard it sometimes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a quick story, Coach I, but early in my time, he used to tell me, he'd say, what's more important, a 20-point per game scorer that can't play any defense, or a 10-point per game scorer that can hold a 20-10, and it's 10 points you get either way, right?
Pick which one
yeah,
is your
so,
team's
so
identity.
you get that a little bit. So this group, you mentioned some zone defense. You've mixed that in a little bit, and you've told me a couple times, whether pregame or postgame interviews, some of that came with short notice. Whether you weren't 100% and like, hey, we're short bodies, we can't get in foul trouble, so hey, this week we're playing zone. Talk about this team as a practice team and buying into some of those strategical changes.
Well, I think they have pretty good basketball IQ, and so they know we're shorthanded in the post, and they knew Southern, was really good at points in the paint. And so I think on some level it came as kind of like, oh, we have an idea? Okay, great. What is it? Let's do it. Yeah, okay, we're all in. And so and then it looked pretty good at practice. Like I said, I think these kids have had some good coaching, and we've gone against some of these defenses, and so they've had to. If you know how a zone shifts, then you are better likely to beat it. And so I think that it was good. It was really good, to be honest. And we are probably figuring out a little bit about our team, and like you said, again, I've said they're coachable. Like they just, if you ask them to do something, they're going to be all in on it. And so we've really appreciated that about the coaching part of it.
The other thing is about zone, the one thing you guard against is being susceptible to offensive rebounds allowed. And yet all year, you guys have been top 2 or 3 in the league in rebound margin. So what have you seen in your rebounding when you've played zone?
Well, I just think we have some kids that just know how to go get the basketball. They've played enough that there's a fine art between boxing out, hitting your man, how long you stay, and when you go get the basketball. So I think that we just have some players that understand that and can read the ball coming off the rim, and they're long. I mean, I think, that's where people's understanding length sometimes in recruiting. I never understood it either when people would talk about it early, because we'd get some players that were smaller, and we're like, how could they not want this kid? And then you get some length, and you realize how important it is versus zone. You look rebounding, contesting shots, being able to be at the free throw line and still close out to somebody. It's a 2-step sprint instead of a 3-step sprint. That stuff matters. I mean, we talked about our kids that when you play against Hayes, you're going to have to get your shots off quicker. You're going to have to. It makes a difference if you have everybody's out there is 5'6", or if everybody out there is 6 foot. It makes a big difference.
And there's no question, certain teams in this league build their teams a certain way, certain programs with that length and that versatility at a lot of positions. And so Gorilla Women going through all that with a very young team. There is a lot of newness on the women's side this year across the league. They're not the only team, so that's part of what's going to make for some interesting storylines when we get to Kansas City here in a couple of weeks. We'll take our first break with Coach David. When we come back, we'll look back at last 2 games from last week, Nebraska Kearney and Fort Hays State, and look ahead to a very challenging final week of the regular season. We'll do all of that right after this.
The Silverback Fund just helps us go above and beyond to be able to be the best in the MIAA.
You see it as a financial investment, but it's really an investment in people, which is what Pitt State's all about.
We recruit at such a high level. We are competing against a lot of Division I's now. What's going to set us apart and have us in the conversation is the financial part of it.
We couldn't have this success without individual donors, without the community support.
If you're on the fence about giving, come out to games, look at the athletes, and see what kind of experiences they're getting.
Welcome back to our Pitt State Basketball Coaches Shows on this Monday, the 23rd. If you're listening on our flagship 100.7 or through the KSHQ app, Pitt State Athletics will release this final installment of the shows for this season Wednesday at noon through their YouTube channel. So if you miss out on anything along the hour this evening, you can catch that. Women's coach Amanda David here with us. Coach, we were talking about, applying different things. You get late in the season. One thing about that is it's not uncommon. How about this group? And given the fact you've been through some illnesses lately, how about late in the season? Give people an idea of how practice changes from, the physical side and the mental side.
Well, it hasn't changed for us quite yet. It did the weeks we were sick, but then, we lost a little grittiness, I think. We lost a little bit of our confidence. That's what happens when you lose. That's why it's so hard to go through a season. And so we had some truth talks and some dissertations, as I like to call them, because I get going and they have to stand there and listen for a while. And I'll make multiple points about where we're at and what we're doing. But they heard about it for a few days before the Hayes game. And, I just think that we had to get some toughness back and some togetherness. And we did it in the Hayes game, but our practices for a week, we had to get back to our offensive aggressiveness. So we weren't able to really take time off, because you're also seeing these teams for the first time at the end of the season. So you're also watching film on Kearney for 2 days that is pretty intense, and then you got to prepare for Kearney, and then we got to get our feet back under us too. And so I'll be honest, it doesn't change a ton for us. Our kids are pretty tough about that. They practice hard, or maybe a little bit longer, because we just feel like there's things we got to get done. And then if you are going to change a defense or maybe throw in a couple other wrinkles, well, then you got to work on that too. And so that's where, I told you that I've been able to just kind of be man, and in our program for history of just like primarily man and all that. So it does cut down on it, generally speaking, on that. Usually it cuts down. But right now, no, not for us.
The other part about last week, Thursday, Saturday, you're obviously playing at home, but this week's Wednesday, Saturday. How big of a difference does that extra day make in between, whether or not you get it between your midweek game and your Saturday game?
Yeah, well, fortunately, we had played Hayes once before, or to prepare for them in one day, a day and a half. You get a morning shoot around that you can walk through or go through blobs, so your Friday's a little bit lighter. But that proved to be very helpful. Obviously, we wish helpful enough that we could have got the win. We were right there, but where we would be at had we not played them before and gotten exposed early, and then in our prep makes a difference. So 1 day prep versus 2 day prep is huge. And so we still had to practice pretty long Friday. We were there for 2 hours covering stuff. And then, if we were gonna do a 2-3, then what's that look like? And we thought we could guard them a little bit, but you want to have a backup plan. Like some people say that's, you're not believing in what you're doing. No, it's that the other team's trying hard too. That's what you say. Like they're trying hard too. You might want to have a couple things that you want to do.
Well, the Kearney game, they come in and they came in right on the edge of the conference tournament standings. And so they're a little bit perplexing in their record. They came in a game under 500, and then I got to looking at their stats. I told you on the phone that morning and talked to their coach, Drew Johnson, that night. They had 2 players, that's it, that had played in every game this year. So you talk about having to be unbelievably fortunate to get through it. And I don't remember how many different players had starts for them. But talk about Kearney, the makeup of their team, because the veteran Jill Ashoff at point, and then you talk about the length, a couple of 5'10", 5'11s with a phenomenal freshman. So Kearney's a pretty good 13 to 14 team, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so. Again, I said this versus Emporia, I said it versus Newman, said it versus this team, Kearney. We are not overlooking anybody. And obviously when you watch the film, and some of it's matchups, some of it's their style of play, like they run a ton of sets. So just have kids running around and chasing. You don't quite know what's coming next, whether it's a back screen or a shuffle cut or and who it is. Are you trailing this person? Are you going through windows? There's so many different things. And so it was a lot to prepare for. But yeah, they played extremely well. We were expecting them to play extremely well. And then they've got just a couple kids that are just extremely quick. And the Weirs kid is just very dynamic. When you can play at all 3 levels like that, and you can elevate, and you can counter moves, and you can shoot the 3 off of a dime, like coming off of a stagger screen, like that's impressive. She's a very impressive player. So yeah, we had our hands full for sure.
Yeah, Diller, Nebraska, where she's from, and I don't know where that is, but I'm going to guess she spent a lot of time in the gym perfecting her craft a little bit. Really good player for them. The other thing about both Kearney and Hayes, Ashoff and Levy, the 2 point guards for them, both fifth-year seniors. How big of a difference does that make when you get to this point in the season and everybody's playing for something and you have that kind of experience to have the ball in their hands?
Well, we'll be glad to see them go. Because experience, it does count for a lot, and it counts for just toughness. That you know what's coming every game, and you know when to take yours and when to distribute, and just they're very comfortable in their program. They both have committed to those programs for their whole careers, and they're just solid, and they know how to get to what they want to do. There's no secret that Levy is leading in assists, and she knows where her money is at with Weeder. She's leading the nation in scoring. So, and then just finding the other kids when everybody's playing off of them. And so I think it's just 2 outstanding point guards that have really committed to their crafts and to their programs.
Jemiah Brown in both games, pretty good scoring and decently efficient from the field. How much of that is her just getting back to a certain level with her physical strength?
Yeah, being healthy makes a difference, and having a few days of practice to do it. And so, and Camber's done a good job of jumping in for her. And, I think that Jemiah has Jemiah's also learning how to be a leader. She's learning she can't have days off. And it's not just scoring. It's really more the part, kind of like Harper, like you can't have an off day with communication, with being intentional, with how you show up to practice, with competitive nature. And so she's learning some of that stuff. And I'm very proud to see JB grow into that because I've asked her high school coach, and he's like, I don't know, she kind of just goes with the flow and doesn't really excited about anything. And right now she's talking about, man, this is heavy, like I get it now. And so I think she is definitely growing into more of a leader and accepting that responsibility and taking it on herself. And then she can start to expect it of other people. So I'm pretty proud of where she's at right now.
The other part of that, you touched on her defense earlier, playing the 4. You know, you're kind of without that true 4 player, and so she's having to guard down deep with her back to the basket. How much can that affect the player on the other end of the floor sometimes? That you know, she's having to kind of play 2 different positions on one end of the floor compared to the other. Yeah,
very good point. I mean, I think it definitely could affect her, but like I said, a lot of it is mindset. I think it has affected other players that, like I said, that chose to leave or whatever. And it's like, gosh dang, if that's how mentally soft you are, then maybe you should, because your team needs you to do this. And you can easily flip it on the other person. Like, you're kind of out of position. Well, what do you think is on the other end? Now they're a forward having to guard a guard. So if you understand the mismatches, then you actually can make it difficult on the other team too. But if you get caught up in, well, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and if you get caught up with all the distractions and all the why you can't do it, and that's not me, and if you give it every reason that it's not going to work, then you're probably right. And so that's where Jemiah has really, I don't think she's let it affect her. She's just kind of been tasked, and okay, let's go, and she's done a good job with that.
You obviously had to replace a tremendous post presence, and so Casey, your starter in there, and then AB and Marie coming off the bench. And Marie Wimbajonga against Kearney, 4 points, 6 rebounds, 3 on each end of the floor. So talk about Marie and just staying within herself to be productive like the minutes she gave you against Kearney.
Right. We're starting to figure out where to find each other. I thought Jemiah made a couple nice passes to her. Our players are starting to see her more, and when she gets a little bit more time like that, it helps them to see her. And then she gets some rebounds that are, just in her strength. And she really did show her strength on the block. And it can be simple moves for her and just finishing. And she shoots the free throw line all right. And so she's solid. And I just think it's taken us this long to find people's little niches and who they can guard. And so she's done a really good job. And she has been just a really unselfish player, and she understands the game really well. So she understands some of the coaching decisions, and then some of it she wants more, and that's good. You don't ever want kids to be content.
Fort Hays State comes in, so the Gorillas fall to Kearney 72-62. Fort Hays State comes in and had beaten Pitt State 88-70 at Hays on December the 13th, in a rare non-conference game, but fell behind 8-0 and 18-2. And so on that alone, you had to be better. Coach, there were 7 lead changes in the first quarter. So talk about your team coming out and going toe-to-toe right away.
Well, like I said, we had to give some little truth talks, just because I do think we lost a little bit of grittiness and that, because you start to think that maybe you're not getting in the national tournament, and the things that our program and our kids are expecting and what they want to do to continue the program. Sometimes those are tough things to handle right when it's happening, but you can't get caught up in that. You just have to next game mentality and fight for positions like what other people are doing, just fighting for a position in the tournament or whatever. So you kind of got to flip your mindset and not get caught up in the future. Like, this is the now. And so we talked about that, and then we just talked about competing with pride and challenged the girls before the game that the best way to honor Harper, especially as our 4-year senior, was to play with as much communication and high-level competitiveness as she does. And I thought our kids matched that, and to give Ashlyn and Harper a game to go out on with some pride. And so, and we talked about our adversity, and maybe it's done, maybe it's not. But who's going to claw out of it besides y'all? What are you looking for? And then, is this who you are? Is this your pride point? Is just, oh, we've lost a few games, so we're going to, it looks like a lot of hard work. I don't know if I'm up for that. Or are you going to get back in the saddle and, possibly get this win? And we told him, we thought you'll be up. We thought we would be up to start the game. Just, we finally kind of got some moxie to us. And then it was about, I literally told him, I said, but then the thing is going to be, can you keep a 10-point lead? And we're still getting tougher. We're still figuring out the things at the end of the games, about just how to get open and things.
Yeah, obviously left a few points at the line, and the turnovers show up again in the fourth quarter, and so that stuff is just incredibly frustrating. 16 points, one shy of a career high for Casey McCumber, tied a single game record with 22 rebounds, came in as the MIAA's leading rebounder. We're going to have to start setting an over-under on how many times she hits the floor. And there were a couple of hard falls, and she's had that back thing this year. And so, but man, how about Casey leaving it all out there?
Yeah, she is always going to play at a high level. And I said it when we were recruiting her, and people get tired of hearing it. But if you are getting that rebound, you probably won't be standing. Like, and if her hands are on it, you're gonna let go, or she's gonna take you to the ground. Like, proves to be the case more than not. And so that's just her fighter mentality. It's her competitiveness, and it's just her skill. Like, it is her gift. Like, there are certain players that you're like, when God saw you, he said, you're going to be a rebounder.
Yeah.
Like, put some pixie dust on it, and that's who she is. And so it's cool to watch her in her elements, and it's fun to hear the fans talk about that and recognize that, and that's why some people love watching her play, is from rebounding, not scoring. So.
Well, and there was one, you talk about your hands on it. JB had it for a putback, and Casey knocked her down going to get the ball, and gosh darn it, Hayes, it lands in their lap. And I don't know if they scored that possession. I know they banked in a 3 in this game, and every play matters, and a 3-point loss in overtime. So, Coach, you get ready for the final week, and we'll talk about those on respective pregame interviews. But just talk about, whether it comes back to mental toughness or competitive pride here with a really tall task this week.
Yeah, I think it comes down to those are two perfect things to say that it will come down to is, are you going to let the adversity win, or are you going to keep punching? And then, because you never know when it's going to shift. And the universe, I always talk about a lot, it teaches you lessons, and your lesson might be done today and it might not. And so you might get the thrill of victory, or you might learn another lesson. And I think that's one thing other coaches have said is, like, if you're only losing, then you're not really doing the justice of competitive sports. Like, you've got to be learning. And so I think our kids are, like I said, learning some valuable lessons. We were able to learn early. We talked about that, like, who were able to learn while winning. That's awesome. Now we're having to learn while losing. And it will make us stronger. And hopefully if we can learn those lessons, I think there's some individual lessons we have to learn. And then I think, I think as team lessons, everybody has to pay the cost when it's individual lessons. And so we have to be tougher. We have to be tougher in possession games where anything can cause them to go down to the other end and score. Like, I mean, whether it's you went over the back or whatever, you have to be totally mentally tough and locked in to every single possession.
It all matters in a league like the MIAA, especially the deeper you get into the season. That's it with Coach David. We'll take our next break. When we come back, men's coach Jeff Boschee will join us on the other side. Stay with us.
Hey, Gorilla Nation. Gorilla Giving Day returns for its 9th annual celebration on Wednesday, March the 11th. This 24-hour challenge brings alumni and friends together to support our current and future gorillas right here at Pittsburgh State University. This Gorilla Giving Day, there are plenty of ways to get involved and help make lives better through education. Make a gift online, mail in a check, or support a student's Pitt Power project. Your gifts enable PSU to unlock potential in all students while living out a legacy of excellence. Mark your calendars for March the 11th or make an early gift today and join us as we come together to make a lasting impact on the students, staff, and faculty who help Pitt State thrive. Because when gorillas unite, great things happen.
Welcome back to our Pitt State basketball coaches shows. Again, our final shows of the season. Eddie Lomshek with men's coach Jeff Boschee here on the second half of the hour. And so for the Gorilla men, like the women, kind of some up and down to it here of late. And you get ready for the final week of the season. And so Coach Boschee, obviously, everybody wants consistency. And just because you're on the wrong side of it, it doesn't mean your kids aren't trying or whatever. But talk about your team and just kind of where you feel you are going into the final week here.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head just with inconsistency, win one, lose one. Just feel like times struggling with confidence offensively, not trusting each other off on the offensive side of the floor, and I think it spills into the defensive side of the floor a little bit, and just got to find that consistency, got to trust each other, and we've been playing some good teams and had some tough road battles, and the thing is, like we talk about, just the margin of error, especially with some of these games are so close, and we just end up not finishing. Like you said, 2 of 10 in one possession games this season, and it's just been one where we just haven't been able to finish.
In these games too, and Coach David touched on this, that you're preparing for teams for the only time you've played them. So that's the model the MIAA has right now. You play everybody twice before you play the teams once, with one exception, Emporia and Newman flipped in there. But bottom line, what's it like for your final 7 games of the season to be the only meeting of the regular season?
Yeah, I find it a little awkward why we just don't flip it, play our division, the second half of the season. It doesn't really don't really understand it, because really we don't see these teams, and I mean, because majority of the time we're watching other teams while we're scouting our opponents, and I mean we hadn't seen Northwest, hadn't seen Missouri Western, any of these teams at all. So our assistant coaches do a good job. They, I don't think anybody understands the amount of time that our assistants and myself put in the scouting reports, and understanding personnel, understanding their tendencies, things that they'll run out of timeouts, things they'll run beginning of the game, what they do defensively, what they do at the end of the games. There's so much that goes into it, and and that's the hard part. That's as a coach and as assistant coach, the amount of time that you put in, and guys not knowing scouting reports or not understanding what goes into it, because we put in a lot of time, and this time of the year, and everything's magnified. You got to know personnel. You got to understand the tendencies of what the team's going to do, and so it's a little weird, just the fact that you don't see them all year, and then you got to prepare for them at the end of the year.
And that said, I also asked Coach David this with you, that it's not untypical to get deep in the season and you back off practice physically a little bit, but when you are playing teams just once in the regular season, what's it been like for you this year as far as the load you've put on your guys, physical versus mental at practice?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you tail it down, but the one good thing, I feel like we've had a lot more Wednesday, Saturday games, so it gives us a little bit more time to rest. Thursday we don't do much. We let our guys get in, do rehab, and then we'll walk through some of their stuff and do some shooting, and maybe do a little bit of live stuff, and then go ahead on Friday and practice. But it's just a lot of prep and understanding and getting the guys just ready to go.
And then on top of that, you also are talking about the attention to detail, right? And so when you say understanding personnel, matchups, you've been shorthanded all year. And I mean, that was 2 weeks before the season. I remember calling you for a season preview, and I said, you got 18 on your roster. You said we had 9 at practice yesterday. So, golly, you don't know whether to laugh or to cry, right? If you don't laugh, you probably will cry. So you've been set on this rotation for however long, pretty much a month-ish, say, something like that. So when you talk about matchups, if you are a little bit shorthanded, what's that like? Because, recently we saw Hayes with 3 bigs or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is, and we got to deal with it. And the guys that are playing, the 8 guys that are playing, I feel like they're doing a good job. Like you said, the Hayes game, they're playing 3 bigs. We had to go with a bigger lineup with Ethan, AC, and DC there for a little bit, and them just really attacking us inside and taking care of that. But the guys that are playing, they're coming to work every single day and trying to get better and do the things that we ask, and you just gotta go with the hand you're dealt and keep on working and trying to figure it out. But we've been doing a lot of different, the last couple games doing some different things, switching ball screens, and that's so important when understanding, like we talked about with personnel, because you're going to be switched off onto different guys every single time that you're down on the defensive side of the floor. So you got to understand if basically just the tendencies as a shooter, driver, or both, and that's the biggest thing.
Nebraska Kearney came in last Thursday, only game of the regular season again as we get to this point, and man, can they score it. They've just versatility and not a real deep bench in their own right. They also have that. So when you're talking about playing a team and you end up with an 86-70 win, let's start with your defense. How'd you feel with your defense against Kearney and guys executing the scout?
Well, one thing with them, that they didn't have a real true post player. The the 1 or 2 post players, the big Harold kid, number 6, that they had last year. I think he got kicked off the team. So really they played 5 guards the majority of the time. So that's why we ended up switching a lot of their stuff. I thought we did a great job of communicating on the defensive side of the floor, keeping the basketball out of the paint. I thought we did a great job on Jabrian Hill. That he's somebody, 17 points a game, 5 assists a game. So a lot of the things that they do, he creates pretty much everything for him, and we did a tremendous job of just containing him. The Swift kid is a pick and pop 5, and just understanding that, and you know, we did get down on the post. We did a good job of wide trapping and you know, getting the basketball out of there. But I just thought defensively we got stops, and we were able to get out in transition and play a little bit.
Yeah, and they had a little foul trouble in this game. But if I told you before the game Jabryant Hill was going to be 3 for 10, 1 for 4 deep, you'd probably say, "I'll take that."
Yeah.
Right? You'll take
Yeah.
your odds with that. So one thing about this game, you were able to get to the free throw line 27 times. You had 29 total attempts your previous 3 games. Much of this season, your opponents have shot more than you guys, but how good was it to turn the table in this game and convert, hitting 21 of them?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this game, I thought we were, you know, in attack mode offensively. I thought we played together better offensively. I thought we trusted each other. We did a really good job of attacking closeouts, getting in the paint, just being strong with the basketball. And you know, anytime you do that, you tend to get to the free throw line. The more you can get them in rotations, the more you get into the paint, obviously you're going to get to the free throw line, and guys able to step up and make those. But we just did. And the other thing too, defensively, I thought we did a really good job where we could get out in transition, and play a little bit.
Yeah, that was a huge part of it. There were a couple of alley oops, and that takes me to, you know, Coben throwing those to Curry. And so 2 guys we've talked about all year that, you know, when you come off the bench, how does the game change when you enter it? And so Curry is really starting to put that together for you here with a couple of games with good bench production. So I'm sure that's very pleasing. I know you've talked to those guys a lot this season. Pleasing to see them get it going.
Yeah, it is. You know, him, David, and Elijah, and Landon. You know, we need those 3 guys consistently to be coming off, giving us bench production. You know, when they don't, I feel like that's when we struggle. You know, and this doesn't necessarily always have to be points too. It's just got to be energy. You know, one thing with David we've talked about before is just his ability to get out in transition and make plays, whether it's passing or scoring the basketball. And you know, Elijah does a really good job of moving the basketball and getting into triggers. And you know, Landon just you know, being a catch and shoot guy, but then, you know, last couple games, you know, we talked to him about just, you know, being more aggressive, understanding shot fakes, you know, being kind of like RJ was for us the last 3 years prior to that. You know, the shot fake, get into the paint, and you know, he had a couple where he got to the basket and scored around the rim too. So that's growth for him right there.
Yep, and then Ethan Sage. I mean, this Kearney win, it capped a 3-game stretch. He didn't have as good a stat line against Hayes this past Saturday, but man, 18 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover in 36 and a half minutes. So a week ago, we're talking about him and kind of hitting the freshman slump for a couple of games. But boy, how about his versatility when you see that stat line?
Yeah, that's what he does. You know, he does everything. He does everything really well, and you know, the biggest thing with him is just his activity defensively. I feel like when he's more active on the defensive side of the floor, I feel like his offense really flourishes off of that. We talked to him about, you know, getting back to cutting, and you know, got some dunks off of some cuts, and you know, he's just an all around guy. You know, he's a guy. Hopefully, we can keep him around for a little bit, and with today's day and age, the way things go. But he's you know, at 6'7", being able to shoot the basketball, put it on the floor, and then, you know, be able to guard multiple positions has been huge for us.
Mason English led you in scoring with 25 against Kearney, and he had a good ball game. He also had 6 assists, 4 steals, 7 rebounds. Mason, last 8 or 9 games, whatever it is now, I mean, he's flirting with like 50% from the 3-point line. Yeah. Much of the year, he was kind of around 30%. What have you seen from him on his perimeter shot?
Well, I think just continuing to trust it. You know, there's still times where he takes some questionable shots, but I feel like his shot selection has been a little bit better. You know, I think he's had a good balance of scoring it inside and outside, and you know, I felt like this game, the Kearney game, I even told him this, I felt like that was really the first game where I felt like he was a complete and total point guard. I felt like he controlled the game. I didn't see his body language suffer when he made a mistake. He got people involved. I think he had 6 or 7 assists, and you know, and then he had six rebounds and maybe a couple steals here and there, and just felt like he was a man amongst boys out there, and you know, to be able to do that as a freshman, you know, against a team that's beats them. You know, they beat Hayes early in the year, and you know, beat some other people, and you know, just I was proud of the way that was the biggest part. Just proud of the way that he played that game, because I felt like he was just a complete point guard of controlling everything out there on the floor.
You guys were up 41-35 at half, and you had some separation. I think they were able to get it back within 4. So the ebbs and flows of a game, right? So talk about this team, and in this game in particular, the job of your guys to not get rattled and then eventually maintain a lead and widen it to 16.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've struggled with all year. You know, and to be able to see that growth and you know, to hold that team off. I think they cut it to 4, like 63-59 or something like that. And you know, guys stepped up and made plays. You know, David got to the free throw line, hit 2 after being tough with the basketball. I think Landon hit a 3, and you know, just Mason got to the free throw line, I think, as well, when we were kind of struggling there offensively when they were coming back. And you know, I think that just kind of stems from our defensive side of the floor, being able to get out in transition. And David had that nice lob to AC there in the second half, and just kind of give us a little bit of breathing room. But that, you know, that was growth, and that's something we've been, you know, looking for. And you know, when you got a team as inexperienced as us, and as far as this league, and with the freshmen that we do that are playing, you know, sometimes it's hard to learn, and you got to learn the hard way by going through it. And you know, that's what we're doing right now. And you know, hopefully we continue to build, even though we only got a little bit left of the season. Yeah,
there's no substitute for experience. The other thing about the Kearney game, he scored 86 points. Connor Rogers, a 20-point-per-game scorer, was 1 for 4 from the field, only 4 shot attempts, and then he had a little more production against Hayes. But when you're this deep in the season, and Connor's been where he's been scoring the ball, talk about him learning to handle how teams are guarding him.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. I don't think he's not used to it, because that's how he's probably played at JUCO, where he was at in Mississippi. And I think the difference here is, you know, you got a lot more athleticism in this level than probably what he's seen in Mississippi. And you got guys that can really slide their feet. And you know, I didn't feel like he never really could get into a rhythm against Kearney, and got into foul trouble, and picked up his 3rd there in the second half. And then when he came back, you know, just didn't feel like he took a shot and missed it. I think he turned it over a couple times and had a blown defensive assignment. So, you know, just didn't feel like he was very comfortable or confident out there on the floor. And but, you know, for us to be successful, man, we need everybody. We need him to be scoring the basketball and finding people. You know, we need Ethan, we need Mace, and we need that bench production, and Don doing some things down on the post and rebounding the basketball. And you know, just with the 8 guys that we got, you know, there's not much room for error. We need everybody to be on the same page. We need everybody to be contributing in some aspect, shape, or form. And you know, when we do that, you know, we're a pretty good basketball team. When we don't, we're pretty average.
Had enough of it against Kearney in an 86-70 win. We'll take our final break on the show. When we come back, we'll talk about the Fort Hays State game this past Saturday. Look forward to a very challenging week for the final week of the regular season. We'll return with Coach Boschee right after this.
Are you ready to experience a university that goes beyond the classroom? At Pitt State, we prepare you to conquer the world after graduation. With award-winning programs in technology, business, science, and more, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's ever-evolving economy and communities. Don't just get ready. Be more than ready for whatever comes your way. So what are you waiting for? Kickstart your path to success at Pitt State today.
Welcome back to our final segment of our final Pitt State basketball coaches shows for the season. Eddie Lomshek along with Pitt State men's basketball coach Jeff Boschee. Again, you may be with us on this Monday, the 23rd, on our flagship 100.7 or through the KSHQ app. Noon Wednesdays, Pitt State Athletics will release a video installment of these shows on their YouTube channel, so check that out if you've missed anything from the past hour or so this evening. Coach, Fort Hays State comes in, final home game of the season, and so on that, we're obviously getting very, very deep in the season, and Hays, and boy, they hang their hat on their defense, and 22 points at halftime, a season low 56. Not that you weren't in the game, obviously, in touch on the scoreboard, but how about the mental toughness to play against Hays when you know how they're going to muddy the game?
Yeah, I think it takes both mental and literally physical toughness against them. Like, you got to understand, you got to be able to play through contact. You got to be able to play through, like, you're not going to get all those calls. Like, you get pushed and shoved. Like, that's just the way it is. And when you go to Hays, it's even worse. You know, so just understanding, like, you know, the thing is, like, they make it so hard on you to have to make the reads, the correct read. Like when you drive it, they're going to collapse. I mean, darn near 3 guys on the basketball, and you got to be tough enough to handle the ball and be able to make the read. And like you said, they do got some length. There's some times where some of our guards got in there to shoot around the basket, and the zero, I can't even pronounce
Makuna,
yeah. Just his length, and then 25 Juju, his length as well, and the big freshman kid 32 or sophomore kid 32. Just their size is just physically tough on you, and then you got to be able to withstand runs. And I thought that's something that we did. To play as bad as we did on the offensive side of the floor in the first half, and to be able to come back and do the things that we did to give ourselves a chance. I thought that showed some growth there.
Yeah, down 9 at halftime and 22 points. And I mean, you can sit there and say, well, we can't get anything going or whatever. Bottom line, there are 20 minutes of basketball left, and you did have a run, and there was a stretch where there were 4 lead changes in about 2 minutes in the second half. So there was definitely some back and forth to this game. Had you seen that out of Hayes? Have they played the 3 bigs like that?
Not in the games that I probably watched.
They had some foul trouble in this game.
Yeah.
Grill got in foul trouble.
Yeah. The one, 32, the big kid that they had, the sophomore, last year when we played out there, he came in, barely played, but I mean, when he played, man, like as a freshman, I was like, wow, this kid's going to be good. And they do some things with him where they just kind of keep him on the block and go block to block and just let him seal. And he's a load inside. And so it was one of those we were switching the ball screens because we want to keep everything out of the paint. They don't shoot a great percentage from the 3-point line. So just kind of building walls around there. And I thought when we got to our wide traps, we did a pretty good job of executing them and rotating out of them. Is really literally when we, let the bigs go one-on-one. Felt like, that's when they scored a lot of their buckets, and just, when we got that lead, it came down to the offensive side and turned it over a couple times in a row, and not getting stops. Some situations where we let the basketball get past our first line of defense, not being in gaps, and understanding the scouting report and who you're guarding on the perimeter. If you're not guarding, you're guarding a guy that really can't shoot it, to really plug those gaps. And we just had some mess ups there and just couldn't finish it off.
Yeah, and to Hayes' credit, only 3 turnovers. I mean, they did a super job with that. They play a very deliberate style. And, Coach Iba used to talk about when Truman State had really good teams in this league, it was the first basketball coach I ever heard reference time of possession.
Yeah.
And because it can take such a toll on you, especially if you don't get rebounds. And so with that, you 52 shot attempts, that jumps off the page as a pretty low number. How real is fewer possessions against Hayes?
Well, I think, that, the way they're playing offensively, but also just the way they were playing defensively, they went to a little bit of switching too, and that's something that's bothered us.
Yeah.
And, I thought our offense definitely wasn't as good as it as it was against Kearney, and the period where we went on that run to take the lead, I thought we did a good job of getting it inside. That's what we couldn't do the first half. Getting the basketball to the paint, whether it be by getting to the short roll or driving it. A few times that we got it there in the first half, we'd throw it at their feet, and Hayes would, we'd fumble it and Hayes would get it, and just thought we did a better job of that there in the second half. For that period to take the lead, we just couldn't continue it down the stretch.
In rebounding, they only had 6 offensive rebounds, and that's a manageable number. Donald Coates has been a lot more assertive on the glass second half of the season. I really think starting with that Northeastern game. And so 12 points, 13 rebounds for a double-double. Do you feel like his assertiveness on the glass, he had one stretch with 32, I think, 3 games. Do you feel like that's helped stabilize your rebounding a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That's something I talked to him about, I think it was after the Southern or the Northeastern game at their place. I can't remember what it was, but that's something I feel like he's taken pride in and understanding that that's something that he could be really good at. And I feel like he tries to get every defensive rebound. And that's one area in basketball where you can be selfish, and he's got the length, he's got the athleticism to do that, and it's he's been pretty consistent with it throughout this stretch.
He was 5 for 10 from the field, made both of his free throws, and so when you talk about a double-double, he had 12 points to go with 13 rebounds. How about his skill set offensively?
Yeah, I think he's gotten a lot better, especially the second half of the season. We've worked on it quite a bit, just ever since we've seen the switching stuff of, trying to be able to throw the basketball inside and going and getting a bucket. I feel like he's gotten a lot better at just keeping it simple with just the jump hook, being stronger with it. He's got the ability to shoot it. He's just got to, use his legs and jump. He's short a lot of the times, but he's consistently grown in the aspect of he's not the biggest, thickest 5-man in the world, but he does use athleticism, and when he elevates to that, that jump hook, you feel pretty comfortable with that thing going in.
Well, and that said, here's a guy, he's on his 4th school. How much had he played with his back to the basket or having to play the 5?
Well, he didn't. He did a little bit at Parkland, and then last year at Emporia, he talked about really working on his post game there at Emporia because they played him at the 5 there as well, and said he really improved there, until he got that knee injury. But that's an area where he can consistently grow and just get stronger in the lower body to hold his ground and be able to bully through some guys.
Hayden Shanks went 3 for 4 in this game, made his only 3. He had 8 points. He's obviously not a guy you've had to necessarily rely on for scoring, but just in general, talk about Hayden and the role he's played or the many hats he's worn for you this year.
Yeah, he's worn them all, and we've talked about it before, but he's just a guy that a lot of times you got to have on the floor because he understands everything. He knows personnel, he knows scouting report, he knows how to play with being in our system for 4 years. He's got a good understanding of that, and the second half of the season, I feel like he's had some games where he's really scored the basketball, and we wish he could just get it consistently. He had a couple games going, maybe the Southern game where he didn't score at all, or maybe scored 1 bucket or something like that. But we got to have a little bit of consistency from him from the scoring aspect of it, because you're going to get the hard work, you're going to get the toughness, you're going to get him crashing the offensive glass and and diving after loose basketballs, and that's the stuff that you can't coach. You got to have the will as a player to do that, and that's something that we love about him.
There was one game recently, he had both hands taped up, both thumbs. It looked like a fighter, they tape before they put on their gloves. Yeah. That's what he looked like. He had the first thumb injury down in San Antonio, and then the other one was taped. I'm like, how do you even shoot a ball or do any of that? But, man, he's a blood and guts guy, no question about that. Coach, you get set for a very challenging final week of the regular season. Top 2 teams in the league, Washburn, who's already clinched it, and Central Missouri, who's on a pretty good roll right now as well. So just on that alone, talk about what it'll take in terms of playing one possession at a time, or how you approach it.
Yeah, I mean, we need everybody to be playing their best. Obviously, it's I think as a college basketball player and a competitor, that's something that you want to go do. You want to go play the team that's been number 1 in the country, or I don't even know what they're at right now, but they're a very good basketball team. But at the same time, they're not unbeatable. We got to make sure that we're all on the same page. We got to take care of the basketball, with all their traps, from ball screens to post ups, and making sure guys are available. We can't play on our heels. If we play on our heels, they're going to smell blood and they're going to attack, especially at home. They've had some games where Northwest Missouri, I think they beat by 50. And so if you go in there scared and timid, they're going to smell that and they're going to continue to attack. So we just got to go play and know that we're capable of doing it, and let the chips fall where they may.
This team in general, as you get to where it's going to be conference tournament and it's obviously a win or go home situation, how important is it to, I guess, scoreboard aside, just play well, stay away from the turnovers and some of those self-inflicted wounds?
Yeah, I think it's. I think a lot of that has to just do with confidence and just being able to be strong with the basketball, understanding. The other thing too is having great shot selection, because a lot of times you get to what we call shooting turnovers, making sure that we get good shots every time down the floor, and like you said, this time of the year, every possession is magnified, and you got to value each possession. You got to value the basketball every time down the floor. You got to be able to get to the offensive rebounds to where you can get second chance opportunities to score the basketball, and then the defensive side of the floor too. You got to value each possession there and understanding what you need to be doing and executing the game plan.
All right, Gorilla teams at Topeka on Wednesday night, at Central Missouri Saturday afternoon for the final 2 games of the regular season. So we'll have those for you, obviously, when they roll around. Big thanks to Coach David and Coach Boschee. These guys are as good as anybody to work with. My job's easier when I'm informed, and that's never an issue with them. So I can't thank them enough for their time all season as we wind down our final shows of the season. So for everybody here at 100.7, thanks for being with us, and go Gorillas.